common question is, which salsa is spicier? So, Ale, let us know your theory about it.
It depends on the mood of the lady who prepares the salsa. So the sauce, when it is green or red, you always have to ask. One day it can be the red sauce and the next day it can be the green. But what we know is that every Mexican has a favorite one. For example, I am for the green, or when I want to have both of them, I just ask for a bandera, a flag, because they are the colors in our flag. And remember, in Mexico we have a saying, si no pica, no sabe. If it's not hot, it doesn't taste.
That's also true. So we have this, I'm not gonna say belief, but have this kind of saying that the spiciness on the salsa depends on the lady who is preparing this salsa. What I think is more accurate is that it really depends on the chili pepper. Yeah, we don't know exactly when the chili pepper is gonna be spicy. No, it can be sometimes the green one, sometimes can be the red ones, but it really depends on the chili pepper itself. So the truth is that chili peppers are spicy no matter the color. So our suggestion for that, for not getting like too hot when you try a new salsa, is first maybe to try a little drop from the salsa you want to taste, and after that you will be sure which one it is spicy or not.
The Mexican way is just to ask to the lady.
Honestly, you never trust a Mexican when a Mexican says it's not spicy or esta no pica. Never trust a Mexican about it because we are used to it. We've grown with this since we are kids. So for us, it's normal to try spicy salsas. So better, but I mean, of course you can ask. My advice, better taste it yourself. The next question is also one of the questions I got asked very frequently, which is what's the difference between a taco and a tortilla? I'm gonna be super honest. The first time that someone asked me this was really shocking. For me, it's something so normal, so regular, that I couldn't imagine someone not knowing the difference between a taco and a tortilla. But the answer is actually that in Mexican culture, tortillas represent a lot of things. It's part of the food, it's part of the daily basics. So what's a tortilla? I gotta start to say that tortillas are what you get from the nixtamalized corn or the hominy, after cook. Is this round, thin nourishment we eat at every meal. That's a tortilla, this flat thing we see all the time all over Mexico. And tacos are basically what the tortilla holds. What is inside a tortilla makes a taco. There are hundreds of different types of tacos all over Mexico, but basically any food you put inside, it's enrolled over, it's gonna be a taco. What do you think, Ale?
Yeah, I would say that the only tacos that sometimes make me really think about the definition could be tacos de canasta, because tacos de canasta, they are old like quesadillas. Something I never really have understand, but as Mexicans, we sometimes don't really know, or we could be wrong sometimes also, no? And the other thing that sometimes people ask about the tacos is the flautas. The flautas basically is a taco. The only thing is that has another name because they look like flutes. They are fried tacos, deep fried, and usually they are made with chicken or whatever. And we just call them flautas, but basically it's a taco.
That's true. You just made me think. I've never thought about the tacos de canasta before.
Good one.
Yes, they are folded. If you have never seen tacos de canasta, That's like another super interesting question, actually, because tacos de canasta come basically in a basket, and they are tiny. They come with like little tiny tortillas. The tortilla has been not deep fried, but it has been warmed up with some oil, so it's like a little greasy. And then inside have like one dish. Normally on these baskets you find maybe 5, 6 different flavors, and they sell you this by order. No, you are order, you ask for one order, and they give you how many? Like 4, 5? No,
3, yeah.
No,
about 5. Yes, exactly. It depends how hungry you are.
And it's like a tiny little taco, no? And then this guy has also next to the basket these 2 big jars with salsa, red or green, lime. Oh, they also have sometimes this pickle habaneros, no, with some onions. And then you start to put whatever you salsa you want. You add the salsa, you add some lime, and you have them. No, but yeah, that's true. We call them tacos de canasta, but they are folded. That's an interesting thing to mention. Good. That's a good question, actually.
Exactly. So, next one. How is healthcare in Mexico? This is also often asked by people because sometimes they really are concerned to know more about what is going on with us in Mexico. So, technically speaking, every Mexican has access to the healthcare system. It depends on who you work for and which medical care institution will give you the coverage. For example, it can be IMSS, ISSSTE, Pemex, or the military. But if you don't have an employer, the government will provide you Social Security by signing up to a program, and sometimes you also have to pay a small fee. So this is like, generally speaking, how is healthcare in Mexico?
When it comes to talk about the healthcare in Mexico, a lot of people also get surprised by the fact it is for free, like technically for free. You do pay a fee. Honestly, is very, very low compared, I think, to other countries that have also social security, and I think the idea is pretty cool, of course, to have like a free medical care system. Although I think one of the problems we have about the healthcare system is that is not enough the spaces we have for this. Sometimes it gets collapsed when we are too many in Mexico. I mean, we're talking about a population all over Mexico, more than 130 million people. So of course, sometimes it has some failures, but in general, I feel it's pretty cool to have something like this in a country like Mexico.
So passing to our next question is to Maria, are Mexicans well paid?
Again, and we're still talking about like lifestyle and how do we Mexicans live, and well, I gotta say without a doubt, Mexico is a country of large contrast. Not that long, we have the richest man of the world, the Mexican Carlos Slim, and at the same time, we have a lot of population which live in extreme poverty. This is one of the huge contrasts we find in Mexico in general, again, all over the country. This is a current situation as well, but if there is something we can tell about it is that we Mexicans are hard workers. We always find a way to get by. Now, what do you think, Ale?
And just to have perhaps an idea in numbers, the average wage in Mexico is gonna be around $400 per month. and just to know more about the minimum wage per day, per 8 hours, a Mexican can get up to 100 pesos, which is around $5 per day.
Very diverse. Depends a lot on your type of job, on the company you are working for, but average, that's how we Mexicans live.
Yeah, sometimes tips, that's why they are important in certain restaurants or in certain jobs, no? Because it's the only way to raise a little bit more for the family.
Mexicans, that's how we are. We are hard workers. We are used to that. We are proud to be Mexicans. Every Mexican you ask, if you find one in another country, he's gonna say proudly he comes from Mexico.
The contrast you can find in Mexico is so important that's why you have to travel not only to one region. No, you have to come to the south, then to the center, to the north, because it's the only way to see this huge contrast, not only in terms of people or economical situations, also in terms of geography, nature. What you can do in Mexico, you can be from a desert to the cenotes, sinkhole, we have beaches, and I mean, Mexico really has this big contrast in every sense. That's why you have to travel all over the country, exactly.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you have come here already, you might probably visit several places. Maybe you have visited the central part of Mexico, which is Mexico City. You might be going to the Mayan Rivera or to Los Cabos as well, which is like the most popular places where you can see this contrast. No, we also a little bit more in the north. We have another a climate, another weather that you wouldn't imagine you are in Mexico actually. So we really recommend you to come to visit Puebla, of course, but also some other regions around.
So we hope you enjoyed this activity or these answers that we gave you, and we hope to know more from you, and hopefully you ask more, because it's what we enjoy and why we are here with you as tour guides.
Yeah, please, if you have any questions, if you feel like we miss maybe an important question, please let us know. We will be happy to do maybe another video of the same kind, and thank you so much for watching us.